All right, fellow students, in our study of the Ten Commandments, those of you who are joining us for the 10 words, for the 10 sayings, thank you so much. We're in week 7, recapping the readings for that. And so far, we've been working our way through these 10 commandments, and I wanted to share with you just kind of our review again of all 10 commandments. Here's where we are cumulatively in the 10 sayings. Number 1, God is powerfully rescuing me, and He is powerfully rescuing us. Number 2, nothing before God and God before everything. Number 3, reverence for God in my heart lives in my words. Commandment number 4, rest and right yourself with God and family weekly. Commandment number 5, honor the weight of your parents' responsibility to God and be an honorable parent. Commandment number 6, every person's life equally is valued at God's own life. Commandment number 7, sexual purity protects our love and it opens up creation's greatest pleasures for us. Commandment number 8, you have enough already and can work hard for whatever else you need. Commandment number 9, which we're actually going to spend time talking about today, champion everyone's true identity, integrity, and reputation. And commandment number 10, find pleasure in God and what He has blessed you with. That's our recap of the commandments up to this point. So let's find ourselves into this week's section, the word section. Word number 9, saying number 9, the 9th commandment commands us this way. In Exodus 20, verse 16, and its mirror in Deuteronomy 5:20, it reads, do not give dishonest testimony against your neighbor. Other readings during this commandment you would have seen in week 6 came from Proverbs 31. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless and see that they get justice. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 25. A truthful witness saves lives, but he who utters lies is treacherous. And then as well, Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 4. God, the rock, His work is perfect, and all His ways are just. A faithful God without deceit, just and upright is He. We are to be like God. We're to be like our Father. We're to be upright in the way that we speak, and of course, not tell treacherous kind of lies. Now, most people generally think of this command as this, thou shalt not lie, and it definitely is a prohibition against lying. It's definitely about integrity, but I think we're going to find, we are going to find the truth about truth is also about identity. We're going to talk more about that here in the stirred section. Okay, here we find ourselves in the stirred section, and what we're going to find is that there are 2 challenges about truth in our everyday world, the world at large around us, and then even just in our own day-to-day living. One is theological and personal relativism. They are one and the same. We'll talk about how that looks. One, the big idea that there's no such thing as truth, and then acting like there's no truth, whether it's theological relativism or philosophical relativism or personal relativism, meaning I kind of bend the truth to get whatever I want. And then the second one is about identity. These are the risks that we face when the truth becomes at stake. So in that first section, as you saw in week 6, day 1, Richard Rorty, he represented relativists theologically, philosophically, everywhere when he said that everyone should get their hands around one idea, that the world and truth is relative. He was actually so bold as to say that truth is a social construct. What's true to you may not be true to me, and that's okay, Rorty claimed, right? I guess his suggestion, it sounds appealing. It sounds easier, but it rarely works okay, does it? It doesn't really work. It doesn't work where truth doesn't have some kind of basic objective reality to it. Because when objective truth comes up against, it's not just Rorty's theory, he's just the voice we're talking about. When objective realities come up against his relativism, objective truth always has to win out. And I'll explain it. We all count on objective truth to win out. We all need 2 + 2 to equal 4, and I'll tell you why. If you drove to wherever you drove to today to be a part of this group, you probably drove across a bridge. You want the people who designed and built that bridge to make sure that 2 + 2 always equals 4 and all the math that pops out because of it, right? You want them to not be relativistic on this particular case. You don't want them to think, well, 2-ish plus 2-ish is 4-ish. 5-ish, 6-ish, because the difference between a half inch on the supports for the bridge that you drove over is all the difference between living and dying. I want my brain surgeon and my heart surgeon to not have a relativist view of the parts in my brain. I want them to use the exact same words for the exact same situation, because when that brain surgeon goes in, and I don't have a lot of brain to give up, right? I want them to be exact. I want them to be very, very objective in this reality. I don't want them to be ish with anything that has to do with my brain or my heart, nor do you. We all need objective reality. So this is a challenge to us because we live in an increasingly relativist mindset. The world around us, this is something we may wrestle with ourselves, and it's certainly in our surroundings. You may be still thinking about this particular question. You know, is there such thing as Christian truth, Islamic truth, atheistic truth? Is it possible that everybody has their own kind of truth, which is what Rory says? Or you may be wrestling with that. For certain, in the world in which we exist, people talk about their own truth, my truth, as if there could be separate sorts of truths, and even truths that are in conflict with one another. Having truth and integrity mean that breaking either, though, is always wrong, no matter what culture, no matter what time, no matter what civilization, no matter what religion. Truth means that breaking either integrity or truth, it's always wrong. You probably read week 6, day 3's story about Plato's Republic and about a guy named Gyges. When we talk about not just conceptual relativism, what we have maybe more personal relativism. Are we willing to bend reality a little bit to get what we want? And Gyges' story is one about that. Gyges found a ring, if you remember, that would make him invisible, and he used it in his own life to seduce the Queen of Lydia. He did it to secure power, and he used it for all his own selfish purposes. And as the story was being told, Plato's brother, it's actually his older brother, a guy named Glaucon, and he held a cynical view that if anybody had that ring, no matter whether they appeared to be just or unjust, they would both do the exact same thing. If there was no repercussions for doing whatever we wanted, if we could get away with it, if we could bend our integrity to get what we want, Glaucon's theory was that everyone would do it, that there would be no such thing as a just person, that people only tell the truth out of necessity and not out of doing the right thing. So here's a kind of a conversation point maybe to book end or to dog ear for tonight. Do you agree with Glaucon about how and why people practice integrity? Would everyone use the ring for their own selfish purposes or for evil? I would love to have that conversation go around the circle a little bit. Is that the kind of right view? Is it possible that somebody would do the right thing even if they could get away with something else? But there's a second challenge that in everyday life, in the stirred section here, a second challenge besides moral relativism and its difficulties with our personal integrity. And that is this, that truth is a thing about identity. And really, this is the heartbeat of the commandment. Go back to the beginning of the idea of the commandment. In week 6, day 2, we explained more deeply the actual nature of the 9th commandment. It's a forbidding of offering dishonest words about our neighbor, right? In whatever context, it's a forbidding of saying something untrue or not helpful about or to our neighbor. Breaking this command puts our neighbor at risk at whatever degree or in whatever context we endanger them. So, in this particular case, it sounds more like in the context of a courtroom. But the same thing can happen over the fence between 2 yards and between 2 neighbors, or at the water cooler, how we talk about somebody that we work with. How we speak about another person's identity speaks closely about how much we adhere to the spirit and the principle of this word, of this saying. It's not just that we'll always tell the truth inside of a courtroom when we put our left hand on the Bible and we raise our right hand. That's not the only time we're required to keep the words of the Bible and this particular word. Again, so whether you're on the field or you're yelling at the television about somebody's character, their politics, their view, do we speak well of them? Do we protect their identity? Do we treat even their disagreement with us with some level of integrity? We are to protect our neighbor, and that includes his or her reputation. So this means we have to guard ourselves against unkindness. That unkindness is built into breaking this ninth commandment. It certainly protects us, or we have to guard ourselves from gossiping about someone. We protect our neighbor's name, their integrity, and their identity. In fact, we don't just guard it, we champion it. Our neighbor's identity, who God intends them to be. Now think about that for a second. Not maybe who they are, who they've been, but who God intends them to be. We have a responsibility to champion that identity and to believe that that's going to be true of them. To their last breath, we will try our best to see that through. We are a carrier of our neighbor's name on our lips, how we speak about it to our spouse, how we speak about it in front of our kids, to our coworkers, to people at church. We are champions of our neighbor and their name and their integrity. Even if they aren't all the way there yet, neither are we. I hope that they speak well of us, right? This is the idea. But breaking the ninth commandment doesn't just put our neighbor's identity at risk. It actually puts ours at risk too. Did you read that quote of Nathaniel Hawthorne's during that week's readings? He said that no man for any considerable period can wear one face to himself and another to the multitude without finally getting bewildered as to which may be true. This is what happens when we're in a tangled web of lies, right? What did I tell my mom? What did I tell my brother? What did I tell my husband? What did I tell my wife? And then when those two people meet in the same room and we told two different stories, how do we work our way through that? And so, as Hawthorne points out, we'll get bewildered as to which is true, which means this, that lying is an identity stealer because one can't be ourselves easily. We can't be ourselves easily if we're thinking of all the different constructs of a storyline that is not true around all these different people. It steals our own identity from us. We can't be ourselves easily, which is a terrible place to be. What would be the point of living if we can't actually be ourselves? Well, then how do we avoid the trap of that kind of a thing, to have to be always managing and controlling other people's perceptions of us? Whether it's lying or it's putting on social media versions of ourselves, right? The selfie version of our life. So it's not just simply lying, it's just not really showing who we really are. It's being inauthentic. What's the solution for not having to control or manipulate other people's views of who we are and our identity? Jesus says it's the opposite of lying and the opposite of fabrication and the opposite of inauthenticity. It's the opposite of manipulation. It's this, to simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. That's when you say you'll do it, do it. When you say I cannot do it, don't. Or that you won't do it, don't. It's just simple integrity. When you say that you'll pay the contract on the phone, go all the way with the contract on the phone. Don't expect because they're a mega company that they don't deserve all the payments, right? Or it's these kind of simple things. When you tell your friend that you're going to come help him move something, and it's 9:30, show up at 9:30. Your yes be yes and your no be no. Because you want everybody else to do the exact same. You need everyone else to do the exact same. You want to be able to drive across the bridge believing that the architect, the engineers, and the builders all did it with integrity. Exactly. They let their yes be yes and their no be no. Week 6, day 3 had an interesting question, and that is this. How can we build iron nature integrity in ourselves and also encourage it as a culture in the lives and the people around us, in our families, in our workplace, of course, in our church? How can we encourage iron nature integrity in our own life as well as ourselves? You can pause it right here and talk about it, or you can, again, dog ear it for the conversation after this next section, the nerd section. Okay, so we had the word section. What does Scripture say? The stirred section. How will I do that? It's hard to do that. And then now this last section, the nerd section. So one final thought that will help us, I think, a little bit. Week 6, day 4, you read a proverb, and it said, too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. Too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. In other words, if our word count each day was smaller, we'd be probably doing ourselves a gigantic solid, and certainly everybody else around us. Sometimes we just talk too much, and we get ourselves talked into overpromising, overstating, trying to impress, Too much talk leads to sin, it says. It may be a group conversation. And this is maybe a personal confession. What percentage of your words are helpful each day? What percentage do you think of your own words are true each day and not hype or fluff or working your way around to, again, control somebody's perception of a circumstance that you're in charge of or perceptions about who you are? What actual percentage of your words are helpful? This would be a really great percentage, because the closer we can get to 100%, the closer we are to not only avoiding sin, but living in the spirit of the ninth commandment. Truth, spoken simply, really gets us a long distance and everyone else around us. When the father of the 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant was an old man, it's Kant's father, he made a dangerous trip through the forests of Poland at the time on his way home to what is now Lithuania. And on the way home, he met up with thieves, Kant's father did, who demanded that he give them all of his valuables. And at the end of the ordeal, they asked him, "Have you given us everything?" And he said, "Yes, I've given you everything." And so the thieves make their way to other parts of the forest. And just as they're making their way away from him, he feels the hem of his coat. And in it, he had sewn a small bar of gold for just a circumstance, because he's traveling, doing business, and these kind of things were not uncommon. And so he was trying to protect some of his wealth, his value, by sewing the gold into his hem. And so he actually made his way. He could see the direction that they were going. And Kant's father actually walked and chased them down, and he said, "I have said something that was untrue. It was not intentional, but I was too terrified to think. Here, take the gold in my robes." And he hands him the coat with the gold in it. And then to everybody's astonishment, most notably Kant's father, nobody offered to take the gold. And after a moment, one robber actually went and he brought him back the purse with what he had given to them. Another one actually restored Kant's father's book of prayer. Hear this. Another one of the robbers actually gave him his horse, and he helped him onto it, and they let him go his way because he told the truth to robbers. That day, truth triumphed over thievery. That day, keeping one commandment prevented others from following through on breaking another one, with him as the victim. What can you do? What kind of a truth can you speak into a circumstance, even if it may cost you something? What is something that you can do to speak truth into it and to do it in simple ways? I just want to give you maybe a quick read-off list as you're done, a nerd's list on maybe what to think about. Don't exaggerate. Just don't exaggerate. Tell the truth as it is and say it in as few words as is possible. Another one, don't gossip. You're lying about someone if you do, and you're lying about someone if you listen to a gossip, because gossips always leave off the stuff that they don't know, and they leave off parts of the truth that aren't as titillating as other parts of it. And so gossiping is a lie. It's an untruth, even if a part of it's true. Speak up for someone who is not capable to do so for themselves. That's also the opposite of lying, is speaking up, speaking truth into a circumstance. Pay a contract whose payments you've been lax in paying. That's a part of truth. I will let my yes be yes and my no be no. I will keep up with my contracts. Fulfill your promises and be on time, because time is a promise to be true to that we make with other people. Being on time is commandment keeping of the ninth commandment. If we say that we'll meet at this time, if church starts at 10:30, we show up at 10:30, or if not before. If work starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, you get there at 8. And failure to do so is actually a breakage of the command. Let our yes be yes and our no be no. Lots of things to think about, lots of stuff to have conversation about. I hope you have a wonderful time tonight as a group. God bless you all. We will see you next week as we finish up with commandments number 8 and 10 together. Blessings, you guys.